So now let's go back to the individual that I introduced you to this morning, Kieran, and his transition to bath. So you remember from this morning, if he was asked to transition to the bath, he essentially ignored mom, or he tried to engage mom in conversation about other things to get her off of the idea of going and having a bath, okay? And if left to his own devices, would never actually go down to the bathtub. So when I worked on my doctoral dissertation and I provided supervision to this deaf staff person who had completed training in functional behavior assessment and designing positive behavior support plans, she then did the assessment with the family and then started to develop positive behavior support plans. And this is the beginning schematic, the sort of general idea of her plan for the transition to bath. So I'm going to talk you through the problem and then talk you through how we started to come to a solution. So you remember from this morning that for this child, there was a general lack of predictability in his life, not a whole lot of choice. He didn't sleep well, so he was often tired. He has cerebral palsy and engages in a lot of physical effort during the day, so some degree of physical fatigue, and also poor nutrition because he didn't eat a lot of foods. He had a really limited repertoire of foods that he ate. So all of those things kind of pushing him closer to the edge of problem behavior. And then mom comes and essentially interrupts whatever enjoyable thing he's doing to ask him to go for a bath. At that time, he would then engage in some problematic behaviors. He might yell, he might sign no, he'd engage in noncompliance, essentially ignore mom. He might leave the area or go in the opposite direction of where mom wanted him to go. And if mom tried to physically direct him to go in the right direction, he'd push her away or pull away from her, okay? And the maintaining consequence of all of this was to escape entirely, or at the very least delay that independent transition to the bathtub. And, kind of secondarily, he'd get to spend more time doing whatever it was he was doing at that moment, okay? So that was our understanding of the problem. And when the consultant sat down with mom and said, here's what we think is going on, what do you think? Mom said, yeah, that sounds about right. And so then, well, what would you like him to do? And I think mom probably rolled her eyes and kind of went, well, duh. If I ask him to go for a bath, I'd really like him to just go down the hallway and go for his bath. And okay, yep, cool. And if he does so, how might we reward him for doing so, for listening and doing what you've asked? And well, certainly praise, because we always want to do that. And praise was actually already meaningful for him. He liked it when he was praised for doing good. And then mom said, after his bath, he can have a choice of an activity that he can do before he goes to bed, right? We have bath, and then he's got a little bit of downtime, and then he goes to bed. I'm happy providing him with a choice of activities. Great. So we're not going to get from our current problem behavior to him going, why, yes, mother, I would happily go to the bath. That's not going to happen overnight, right? Most children don't work like that. So we always think of teaching an alternative replacement behavior, something that gets the child what the child wants, in this case, a delay to the bath, in a more appropriate way, while we're working on our ultimate goal of him saying, why, yes, mother, and going down to the bathtub, okay? So the alternative replacement behavior was, instead of engaging in problem behavior, he could ask for 5 more minutes. He was a deaf child, he signed, so 5 more minutes to stay with whatever activity he was with. Mom would set the timer for 5 minutes, and then it would be bath time, okay? So that was the general plan. We sat down with mom. Mom was cool with that, all good. And so then we started to break it down into strategies, okay? So in terms of setting event strategies, we were going to use a visual schedule to provide more predictability. We're going to embed choices within the routine so that he would have some control over what was happening. We were going to use a visual timer so he would know when it was time for bath. We were going to make sure that he had a bit of rest time before the transition so that he wasn't engaged in a lot of physical activity, so he had a bit of sort of physical rest. And also making sure that he was given a snack. So if he hadn't eaten dinner, right, which often he didn't eat a lot of dinner, that while he was sort of playing after dinner before bath, that there was some food out for him that he could snack on so that he wasn't hungry, right? Because again, hungry just pushes him closer to the edge. In terms of antecedent strategies, rather than just saying, time for a bath, go, Mom was going to start using positive contingency statements. So if you go for a bath quickly, for example, then you can do preferred activity, okay? And we would pre-correct, Mom would pre-correct him to ask for 5 more minutes as needed, okay? So we had a couple of thoughts here around this asking for 5-minute delay thing. And we all sort of suspected, and Mom kind of suspected as well, that once we laid out a schedule and there were choices and all of that, that he might actually just go to the bath, right? But if necessary, so if it looked like he was starting to engage in some low-level behavior, like maybe starting to ignore Mom, Mom would say, remember, you can ask for 5 minutes, say 5 minutes, and we would prompt him to do so if necessary. In terms of teaching, right, we needed to teach him that he could ask for 5 more minutes, right? So that's where prompting 5 more minutes would come from. And as well, teaching him to pay attention to, essentially, the visual timer. He knew how visual timers worked. He didn't have one that he was using very consistently at home, so we wanted to make sure that he was paying attention to the timer, knew it was there, and was sort of referring to it before it went off to say it was bath time, so that he was getting a bit more information about that impending transition. And then in terms of consequence strategies, if he went cooperatively to the bath, Mom was going to praise all over the place. Highly preferred activity, so if he went to the bath, then after bath, he could have a choice of something that he really liked. If there was minor problem behavior, right, like ignoring, Mom would essentially remind him of the expectations and redirect him. Remember, we're going to the bath. You can ask for 5 more minutes, right? And finally, minimizing reinforcement. So rather than if Mom said, hey, it's time to go to the bath, and he turned around and started playing with toys, she would make sure that those kinds of things weren't there and available, so that essentially there wasn't a lot of other fun stuff to do. So when she asked him to go to the bath, if he stalled, if he delayed, and he just sat there, well, there wasn't a whole lot fun going on. If he had a book in his hands, she'd actually take the book away. Okay, books are finished. I'll take that. Thank you. It's time for your bath. Let's go. And if he sat there, there wasn't anything fun to do otherwise. Okay, so he would get minimal reinforcement. She's not going to carry him to the bath. She's not going to physically force him to the bath. She's going to set up the environment to encourage him to go to the bath when asked. Okay? So in terms of his visual supports, we sort of embedded a visual schedule into what's called a contingency map, which shows sort of the outcomes based on if you do this behavior, here's the stuff that will happen. If you do a different behavior, here's the stuff will happen. And we embedded his choices in there as well. So let me talk you through this. Over here we have the antecedent, and the antecedent is Mom saying, go to the bath. Now if you go this way along the green path, and you go to the bath fast, and we were emphasizing fast for him. Now, we weren't expecting, lightning fast, but him getting the idea that as soon as Mom asks you, you start making movements in that direction. So go to bath fast, and then you get bath toys. And this is where the choice came, and you're going to see a video in a minute where there's actually a little piece of Velcro up above the bath toys symbol. And when they got to the bath toys part, Mom would present a chart that had symbols. I think there were 4 different options of bath toys that we'd purchased just for bath time, highly preferred, things that he liked, things that he only could access at bath time. They were bath-only toys. And so he could choose one every night. So that way, he always got something that he wanted at that moment, and he never kind of satiated. We didn't just have one toy and it was the same toy every night and eventually he gets bored of it. There were some choices. So now he gets choice. He gets his bath toy. He has his bath. And then here the reinforcer ended up being Dress Bear. And there's a really funny story that goes with this. It was Christmas time just before we implemented this intervention, and he got a Build-A-Bear for Christmas. And he loved that Build-A-Bear. It was the best thing he had ever seen. And he loved to change the clothes on that bear. He thought that was the best thing ever. And so we got some pajamas for the bear. We had, I think, 3 different sets of pajamas. And so if he finished his bath and then he got his pajamas on, he could change his bear's clothes for bed. And that was his reinforcer. And he loved it. He lived to change the bear's clothes. If, however, mom said go to bath, and he did not start making movements towards the tub, then there would be no bath toys. You don't get to choose a bath toy. You will still have a bath eventually because mom is going to just keep saying, let's go to the bath, let's go to the bath, let's go to the bath. By the way, we're going to the bath. No, there are no other toys. We're going to the bath until he goes. So what he's going to learn is nothing else happens until you go to the bath. And if you take forever to do what mom has asked you, bath isn't going to be as much fun, okay? So bath is way more fun if mom asks you and you go right away. So you don't get bath toys if you don't go fast. You have a bath. You also don't get to change your bear's clothes, okay? What I will tell you is that we sat down and reviewed this. So the way we implemented was the consultant went in with mom while her son was at school, and they role-played this. They practiced it, okay? And the consultant, being deaf and fluent in ASL, taught mom some better ways to sign some of this information so it was faster and more fluent. Mom was more comfortable giving the information. And so they practiced a whole bunch. They role-played what would happen if he didn't go quickly. They role-played what would happen if he did. They practiced giving praise. They practiced all kinds of things. And then we had the first night. And the first night, the consultant did the routine with the child. So the consultant went to the house at bath time. Mom watched. The consultant did. And then the second night, consultant went back to the house. Mom did while the consultant was there coaching her. And so if there was a problem, the consultant would sort of step in and help. And if things were going well, the consultant stepped back. So there were a few nights of sort of mom and consultant did the bath time. And then we left mom on her own. And in all of that time, never, ever, ever did this child not go to the bath quickly. Never, ever, ever. We showed him the visual. Mom showed him what the expectation was. Mom showed him what he was going to get afterwards. And he went, okay, right? It's kind of like, well, why didn't you tell me? And I often find when I use visual supports that that's kind of the response I get is, well, if you had just said so, I would be happy to, right? And that's kind of how this worked. So here's a video early in the day. This was within the first 2 weeks of intervention. And he's got a book. He's down there on the floor. And he's funny. So you'll see in a couple of bits of this clip where he's humorous. He's got a sense of humor. And that's cool. Mom doesn't want him to be like a little robot. He can have a sense of humor and they can have fun and play with it. That's totally fine. So you'll see how that works. And you'll see him go to the bath. All right, so now it's time. Time to stop reading. And he says, can I have the blue dictionary? Which he loved to look at. It was a sign language dictionary. And she said, no, it's not time. Time for bath. He closes the book. She's going to review that contingency map with him. Go fast. Pick a toy. Have your bath. Play with your toys in the bath. And then change the bear's clothes. What happens if you don't go fast? No toys. Still going to have that bath. No changing those bear's clothes. So watch his fingers, and he traces the green path. And there's the bear. Yep, yep, yep. Bear, he says? Yes. So now here are your toy choices for the bath. And he says, 4. And she says, pick 1. And he goes, 4. No. You hear him, he's laughing. 2, 3. 2, 1, 1. Yeah, 1. What if I sneakily put 2 symbols in my hand at the same time? Wonder if you'd notice. Do you see? There's only one piece of Velcro. He can only fit 1 symbol there anyway. He knows that. She knows that. Which one? Fast to your bedroom. Off he goes. And then he says, come on. Now he's changed. So mom changes him in his bedroom. He can't undress himself. She's got a mat on the floor. And then he crawls over to the bathroom where the bathtub is. He's managed to find a car on the floor on his way, so that's in his hand as he's going along. She just takes it out. All right, no cars right now. And he can see the bin with the bath toys. That's what he's pointing at. Points, bath toys, right there. And it's kind of like, I did my job. Let me see the toy. There it is. Remember, come on, fast. All right, and there we are, right? Ready to be disrobed and helped into the tub. Within 2 weeks, completely solved, right? And so a lot of this was about giving him information around what she wanted him to do. You notice that the transition was made more clear, and, you know, she's not rushing him. It's not like, go right now. She sort of lets him know, okay, it's time, close your book, we're gonna do this. She takes a moment, and that's fine too, right? She lets him know, if you get down to the tub, here's what's gonna happen. He's motivated, right? Something good is gonna happen afterwards. And so he's on board, right? He's all for it, away we go, okay? So that's what it can look like. It doesn't always go, I mean, we don't always solve problems in 2 weeks. We're not magicians. But there are lots of situations where I've worked and, you know, we sort of provide some visuals to the kid, embed some choices, and they kind of go, well, this looks way better. Sure, I'll do this. And, you know, things improve dramatically even just with that.